Throughout the hour, I'll be speaking with 3 generations of Americans of diverse backgrounds on how they've experienced racism throughout their lives. First, 3 generations of Vietnamese descent, all unrelated. Nhan Ha. Born in 1947, she fled South Vietnamese communism and migrated to America in 1975. Van Lee. Born in 1962, he's currently a real estate agent who also fled South Vietnamese communism in 1975. Joseph Nguyen, an American college student born in 1999. Discrimination against Asian Americans didn't begin when the pandemic did. It's been going on for generations.
Racism, discrimination exists in the United States for a long time. That hate about the COVID pandemic, that discrimination get incited because the former president.
Major attacks, violence against Asian Americans because of COVID, but racism against Asian Americans exists since the birth of this country. Name calling against Asian is pretty common. Getting picked on is not something new. When we came here, we had no choice but to make believe like the racism doesn't exist. And me being the first generation, my parents kind of instilled those thoughts in me just so that we could have the courage to move forward. I have two sons. We don't talk about it. And maybe because of that's what I learned, although deep down inside of me, I think I should talk about it.
You know, obviously people that my descendants, my kids and their kids after them are going to have to face stuff like this. It's not going to be, a snap and it's going to vanish. I really wish that no person would be afraid to go out because of their race.
Vietnamese culture, we are very proud of our names. My name actually is Nhan, and the name bird. So I was proudly told my college, oh, this is my name bird. That person gave me a nickname called Bird Brand. At first, I did not understand what Bird Brand means. Then I came home and asked my children. So I was so upset.
When I was about 16, I was walking down the street. There were 2, teenagers, and they wanted to take my gold chain. They were pretty much gather up and gang up. But, living in the urban area, you tend to build this shield of making believe. There was a stereotype that Asian people know Kung Fu and karate and all that stuff. So I survived built on the stereotypes about Asians. I don't know anything about karate. I don't know anything about, martial arts, but, I fought back.
Well, if I were to bring in food for lunch, that was like culturally different from the food that was eaten by a majority of the people, would be like, oh, what is that? Oh, is that gross? It looks like poop or it smells bad or stuff like that. It really made me think about like whether or not it was correct for me to enjoy the culture that I was born into.
My children, they went to the shopping mall. 3 little kids there, call them ching chong, something like that. So my son said, that is racism. The husband said, oh, never mind about that gook. When my time, because I did not speak English like the native here, they could harass me, they could say bad thing about me. I cannot talk back to them. But I thought my children, they were born here.
Me and my brother, we actually went to a dentist. Another man came over and he walks into the counter and he says very loudly that he doesn't want to be in the same office with people like me and my brother. And he requested that we either leave the office and sit in our cars like when we're waiting, or he's just going to make an appointment for a different day.
All minorities got to get together and do the right thing and speak the right, for the right thing.
I'll be back soon with 3 African Americans for a conversation on oppression and microaggressions. The Black community has been fighting for equality since the birth of this country. I spoke with 3 African Americans about the racism they've dealt with their entire lives. Naeem Rashid, a veteran born in 1949 who experienced segregation firsthand. Tanya Boggins, a mother of 4 born in 1969. Corey Annan, a Montclair State student born in the year 2000. The Black Lives Matter movement sparked inspiration for change, but for the older generations, this feels familiar.
Since Black Lives Matter movement, I'm glad people are more conscious about what's going on in the Black community, first of all. And that injustice has been going on since I was a kid. I remember when the police came into our neighborhood to arrest a young man, and then they treated him so bad. And before I know it, it turned into a full-fledged riot in Philadelphia. And it was all about how the young man was being treated. And you fast forward to today, the same is still going on.
I felt the difference in my neighborhood. Like going in the stores, just felt a little bit different than prior.
I feel like people are becoming more socially aware of what they're saying and like conscious. Like I even had people from like 5th grade literally hitting me up and apologizing for like the stuff they called me. It's nice to see the change happening. And I think while we need more change, we're on the right track.
Trump was a big problem as far as race in this country is concerned. He gave the racists a voice again. I see things now that I thought I'd never see again. But the situation is grave now, even much so as thinking about COVID. A lot of blacks, older blacks, are afraid to take the drug because of how they used us as guinea pigs back in the past. The first time I can remember experiencing racism is just walking down the street and have somebody drive by and call you the N-word. Other times, going downtown shopping, we just had to hold the clothes up against us because we're not allowed to go into dressing rooms.
Growing up predominantly in a Black community, I went to an all-Black school. But in middle school, I was, transported to majority white school. And that was the first time that I experienced racism because I wasn't really around any other race besides my own. Teachers were ignoring my questions, like not calling on me if I raised my hands. It's like a hidden thing, like you can feel the undercurrent of it, which you see on TV, which you heard. It made it seem like, okay, Caucasian people were a superior race than us.
Really, it started in 5th grade. And I was a very soft-spoken, just not like the typical Black person you see on television. So I was made fun of for my voice, made fun of for the way I talked, called me like Oreo. It kind of just started to resonate with me. Like, this isn't, just kids being kids. This is racism.
In the military, I ran across more racism than everyday life. And when I went up for promotions or whatever, race came into the issue. When I was at the Pentagon, part of the Navy News Service, I got a new senior chief in, and he came out and told me he didn't like Black people. When my son was born, I just told him to treat people the way you like to be treated. There's no need to walk around with a chip on your shoulder. But if someone addresses you in the wrong, appropriate way, you handle yourself.
I teach them, you don't stoop to a person's level by calling them names. And if they call you a name, if they call you the N-word, if they say something like that, say, no, I'm not, you are. You're the ignorant person because you're calling me outside my name. That's not who I am. And to make sure that they report it so it can stop.
If someone's calling you a racial slur, call him out, but don't throw names at him. Maybe and explain to him why, calling someone the N-word or saying the N-word in general is not appropriate, especially if you're not a person of color.
I'll be back for the final installment of Generations, where I speak to Muslim Americans about life after 9/11. After 9/11, many Americans were left in a state of shock and fear, while Muslim Americans faced discrimination for their own religion and heritage. I spoke to 3 Muslim Americans about the discrimination they faced in their own country. Shapreza Kenka. Born in 1954, she grew up in Macedonia and is a grandmother of 9. 2 of her grandchildren translated for her because she doesn't speak English. Iman Hussein, a professor of Arabic born in 1979. Amir Al-Salman. Born in 1995, he's currently a director at the United States United Arab Emirates Business Council.
Probably from between the 2nd grade to the 8th grade, which was when I left the US, I probably on a daily or at least minimum on a weekly basis, I would have people call me Bin Laden, call me terrorist, tell me to blow myself up, and much more like horrible things. And it got to the point where it wasn't just students. I had like the football coach of the team in front of the entire team, in front of the fans. Instead of like calling my number or my name to go on the field, he'd call me Bin Laden, get on the field.
I came to America in 2006. I felt that, the people, they don't want to talk to me. They take their kids away. I did felt back then that was something to deal with my nationality or my race and my background.
After 9/11,
the FBI and police would go to a lot of the mosques in the north and record the people praying there and question them for suspicious activity just because they were Muslim. My son was really religious as well, and he experienced the police recording him and observing him while he was praying. We would get looks of judgment more often.
Even in these supercharged times since the election of Donald Trump and this past hectic year, I don't think I've experienced anything to the extent of which I did when I was younger here.
I work at college and people are welcoming and accepting. In the area where I live also is have diversity of people, and they accept each other and they are good with each other.
I taught my children to follow the faith, no matter what anyone says. And if you're ever faced with any discrimination, just kill them with kindness and move on. There is no reason to go back and forth. Being Muslim teaches you not to lie, not to steal. It has a lot of good fundamental reasons. I taught them not to confuse that with any perception society puts on them.
Even if you experience something like that, you just should report it and do not do anything against it, because if you do, and then you are doing the same action like the person who did the discrimination to you.
First of all, I think right now society as a whole is getting more accepting of, different races, different backgrounds, religions, things like that. So I think from that aspect, hopefully they won't have to deal with a lot of what I or my generation went through. But from a personal aspect, it starts from, from their very first memories, that you need to tell them that just because someone's color of skin is different than yours does not make them a different person. Just because, you happen to be born Christian does not make Christianity better than Judaism. And just because you're Muslim does not make you superior to a Hindu.
America doesn't have one set religion. It's amazing for Christians, Jewish people, Muslims. I just hope it stays as it is, like a melting pot.
Racism, xenophobia, discrimination, no matter when you were born, these things are happening. Today, yesterday, 50 years ago. It's time for a change we would all love to see. For Focus Racial Justice, I'm Grace Rowland.